Part 31. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 305. Sutingyu's eyes froze for a moment. Exclusive hidden mission? Is the reward too small? When Sutingyu saw the reward, which was only 200 game coins, he immediately looked disgusted. He stretched out his precious little finger and poked accept. 200 game coins is actually not too little. However, Sutingyu suddenly became rich, and there were tens of thousands of game coins on the information bar, so he disliked the mere 200 game coins. But, no matter how small a mosquito is, it's still meat. Why not eat the game currency that comes to your door for free? After Qin-Chi also chose to accept the mission, another dungeon notification popped up. Dear players, please note that the progress of solving the puzzle of Angel Apartment in this round is 2/8. The panel announced 2 goals, which alerted the other players. There will definitely be some kind of reward for unlocking progress. In addition, if you are more proactive in completing the level in the dungeon, the final settlement reward will be more. There are still 6 progresses left, and almost all players want to trigger and unlock them to get rewards. On the stairs between the 3rd and 4th floors, the long-haired man and 2 other players paused slightly. Another player has unlocked the progress. We have to move faster. The resident of number 406 is just a female NPC, so it should be easier to deal with. In room 302. Then what are we going to do now? Sutingyu looked at the 2 things that were completely inhumane and felt a little confused. If the exclusive mission did not appear, Sutingyu would just let De Hui swallow these 2 damn things. He couldn't even beat Big Hui, and his character was very disgusting, so it was difficult to train him, and Sutingyu didn't want to give the extra room in the stone tablet to one of them. The bad thing is bad, but the good thing is that it is just and fair. And these 2 inhuman things, Sutingyu expressed his disgust. Now, there is an exclusive task. They want to help the original residents. The first step is to gain the trust of the original residents. And the fastest way to gain trust, Sutingyu thinks that finding the enemy who killed the original residents and letting him deal with it is definitely the fastest way to gain trust. Maybe the original resident was so moved that he wanted to move and live in her stone monument. But can a ghost without legs only be able to crawl? Can it float like Big Gray? Otherwise, just let De Hui hold it and flow together in the future. Sutingyu enthusiastically shared all the thoughts in her little head with Qin-Chi. Qin-Chi blinked and was stunned for 2 seconds, then nodded, yeah, sure. The expression on Sutingyu's face was excited for a while, but suddenly it collapsed again. Kikai, can I only hold one more damn thing in my stone tablet? But there are 2 here. Qin-Chi was silent for a second and then suggested, then let De Hui eat one, and you can pretend to be another one. Yes, Sutingyu's eyes lit up. Such a good idea. Why didn't she think of that? Big Hui, come on. Just pick one and eat it. Sutingyu stepped back generously and chose food for De Hui. De Hui looked at these 2 unrecognizable ghosts, feeling that they had really lost all their looks. Master, these 2 are so ugly. Big Gray looked disgusted. He was also a big monster with good taste, and such an ugly thing was not worthy of being its food. Sutingyu's eyes narrowed dangerously. Quickly pick. Okay. Master. I obey. Master, De Hui's face changed instantly. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 306. De Hui looked left and right and picked out the ghost thing whose face could be clearly seen. Just when it was about to speak, Sutingyu suddenly remembered something and immediately stopped him. Wait a minute. Eat that faceless monster. De Hui, Master, what do you want me to choose? Ahem. Sutingyu touched her little nose. Didn't I just remember that it has no face? What if the residents don't recognize him? De Hui, it can't refute. Dewey had no choice but to hold back his disgust, closed his eyes, and swallowed the faceless monster with tears. After the big Hui was finished swallowing, Sutinyu put the big Hui and another damn thing into the stone tablet. Done. Just waiting for tonight? Time flies. At 8 o'clock in the evening, players also returned to their rooms one after another. Second floor. Sutinyu knocked on the door of room 202. After waiting for a few seconds, the door opened, revealing the fat man's round face. As always, he greeted with a smile, "Boss, Brother Chin." After Sutinyu and the other two entered the door, the fat man closed the door neatly. In the living room, Sutinyu saw Gucci and Shan Yu. "Eh? You too?" Sutinyu looked back and forth between the two of them with doubtful eyes. "Hello Susu." Shan Yu was sitting on the single sofa, looking at Sutinyu with a smile on his face and a charming temperament. Opposite Shan Yu, Gucci, who was sitting in the middle of the couch, lowered his eyes expressionlessly, took off his white gloves, put them on again, and took them off again. "You took the benefits and left the person you wanted to protect to me." Gucci turned his head and stared at Sutinyu with cold eyes. "For it." Sutinyu blinked his big eyes and disgust, "Then, give you 1/3. The remaining two people, me and Kikai, take 2/3, isn't it too much?" On the side, the fat man silently counted the number of people. "Well, he is not a big boss, so it doesn't count." "I don't have to." Chin-Chi said softly, thought for a moment, and then explained, "Think of it as paying your debt." Sutinyu chuckled, "Okay. What account?" Gucci heard the key words and asked with raised eyebrows. Chin-Chi glanced at Gucci and replied quietly, "This is my business." "His." Sutinyu secretly thought it was bad and secretly pulled Chin-Chi's hand. However, Gucci showed no signs of revolt and said, "The third should be treated as repaying his debt." "That's okay." Sutinyu grabbed Chin-Chi's hand and agreed. Ever since she learned that Gucci and Chin-Chi had known each other, Sutinyu's hostility and wariness towards Gucci had been relieved a lot. In reality, Gucci's various cares for Chin-Chi and the occasional emotions he showed were all real and could not be deceived. However, Chin-Chi didn't seem to remember what happened between them, and was very resistant to Gucci. To be fair, Sutinyu hoped that the two of them could get along well. "However, I can't bear to live up to expectations. Chin-Chi is still worried about what happened in the last dungeon. Unlike her, who can make Kikai turn around and forget about being angry. I don't need him to pay back." Chin-Chi whispered beside Sutinyu. Sutinyu blinked his big eyes and raised his lips slightly, "Didn't you say that he is your brother? Then it is only natural that he should pay it back for you." Chin-Chi looked stunned for a moment. After reacting, he remembered that in reality, when he was still unconscious, he was fooled by Gucci. Chin-Chi bit her lip lightly, with a depressed expression on her face. He's not my brother. Elder brother. Remember to give a red panda as a gift." Such words appeared in Chin-Chi's mind inexplicably, and his eyes widened slightly. But in an instant, silence fell again, and Chin-Chi had no time to reflect. From Sutinyu's point of view, Chin-Chi was in a daze again. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuan-Kei. Chapter 307. Shan Yu stayed aside and watched, his eyes twinkling slightly as he witnessed the previous exchange between Sutinyu and the others. It's a bit interesting. Susu seems to have the best relationship with the guy named Chin-Chi. The man named Gu was cold, but in front of Susu and Chin-Chi, he seemed to be a little more restrained. Tisk. Shan Yu felt that he seemed to have made a mistake. I originally thought that Susu and the others were just in a purely cooperative relationship, but now it seems More like friends. Or it could be. When those two words flashed through Shan Yu's mind, his eyes became slightly cold. She quietly raised her hand to cover her heart. Tisk, I promised to fix the defects. Why did she still feel so terrible when she thought about those things? Then let's talk about our respective gains first. In order to lighten the atmosphere, Sotingyu began to change the topic, first talking about the fact that she and Qin had unlocked Progress 2, and some new speculations she had about Angel Apartment. After Sotingyu finished speaking, he arrived at Gucci. So it turns out that you unlocked Progress 1, Sotingyu said wow with bright eyes. He looked at Gucci from the left and Shan Yu from the right, and his eyes gradually became uncomfortable. Also, the two players who were eliminated this morning were the masters of the building on the 5th floor. I feel that the building owner is no longer a human being. Shan Yu lightly covered her heart with her right hand. At that moment, she felt a throbbing feeling of horror. Looking back, I still feel a little scared. Hearing this, Sotingyu shook his head. It should be, except for the player, there is no one alive in the Angel Apartment. During the day, most of the people the player sees are not alive. In a dungeon with a thriller attribute, one cannot expect too much that the NPCs will be normal people. Finally, it was Fatty's turn. After 12 o'clock today, I went to room 101 with two other players who live on the 4th floor. But the body of the player who accompanied the NPC to play the game was not found inside, and no trace was found in the room on the 5th floor. It was like he disappeared out of thin air. As the fat man spoke, he tried to make gestures with his hands. Then how did you get into room 101? Sotingyu asked with a frown. Yesterday, if that player hadn't played games with the gamer, the rest of the players might not have been able to enter room 101. Fatty, today, the Game Boy has been staying in the living room playing games. The door was open. After we entered, he ignored us. This is a little weird. The current suspicion is that the player who played the game with the Game Boy was eliminated, but not even a body could be found. This situation only happened to the two players who walked out of the apartment at the beginning. Etc. How did the owner of the 5th floor deal with those two players? Be specific, Sotingyu asked with a slightly anxious voice. Gucci, swallow people. Sotingyu somewhat understood. The reason why there is no body in room 101 is probably because of the Game Boy. In addition, the couple in room 303 were dismembered yesterday, the drunk in room 205, the couple in room 206 quarreling. These were all seen again by other players. The situation was similar to yesterday, and it was like a reenactment of the scene. Fatty's experience today was not as thrilling as the other four, but he stayed beside the other players without any sense of presence and secretly collected a lot of information. After the few people chatted for a while, Gucci lowered his head and looked at the time on his watch, and said quietly, "It's 10 o'clock. Then Fatty, let's go to Gucci's room first." Sotingyu stood up from the chair and looked at Fatty. "Do you still remember what I said last night?" The fat man nodded. "I remember everything." Among the five, only Fatty had not unlocked the exclusive mission. For safety, he continued to stay in the room. The other four people will take advantage of the darkness and when the midnight bell rings to complete their own exclusive tasks. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 308. The four of them went to room 202 next door, which was Gucci's room, and planned to stay here until the midnight bell rang before taking action. The exclusive tasks of the four people all involve finding people. However, there are differences. Sotingyu and Qin were looking for the disabled young man. According to the clues they got and the contents of the exclusive mission, they could narrow down the search scope in the entire apartment, focusing on all the stairs. As for the couple Gucci and Shan Yu were looking for, they had no precise information to narrow down the scope of their search. It stands to reason that the couple in room 401 were killed in the house, and the undead that appeared after death should appear at the place of death. If it was in the house, it should be easy to meet, and there would be no exclusive mission. According to this logical reasoning, the first result was to rule out room 401 as the murder scene. Ring, ring. The crisp bell sounded again. 12 o'clock midnight is coming. The entire angel apartment also underwent some unspeakable changes in an instant. Then let's take a step first. Sutingyu waved his paw at Guqi and Shan Yu, and then left room 202 with Qinchi. Sutingyu and the other two had a clear direction of search. When midnight came, they went out without hesitation. After the others left, Shan Yu asked, "Hey, where are we going to find them?" Guqi glanced at her, took out the porcelain bottle containing the thief Suda from the inventory, and released the latter. Because at midnight, Suda's appearance completely changed. There were large burn marks on his body. Under insufficient light, he felt like a big black coal. Shan Yu's eyes were slightly surprised. He is. After 12 o'clock in the day, he can return to his pre-death state, and after 12 o'clock at midnight, he will be exposed to his post-mortem state. Guqi explained expressionlessly, he was burned alive. Huh? Burned alive? Guqi didn't open his mouth to explain any more. The silk thread that tied Suda was still there. The former's fingertips moved slightly, and the silk thread on Suda's body suddenly tightened and penetrated deep into the charred skin and bones. Immediately afterwards, the silk thread flickered with electric light, and Suda's entire body began to shake little by little. Gradually, a relatively obvious look of pain appeared on his charred face, whose facial features could no longer be seen clearly. Ah! Suda couldn't help crying out in pain. The wailing was so loud that it could be faintly heard outside the door. At this time, there was a thin and short figure outside the door of room 202. Just as he was about to reach out and knock on the door, he was stunned by the wailing coming from inside and froze in place for a while. When it finally plucked up the courage and wanted to knock on the door fiercely to scare the adults inside. A scream of agony seemed to break through the door panel and directly hit its little head. Woo, woo. After a while, it retracted its paws, covered its face, turned around and ran away. There seemed to be a trace of grievance in its back. And at this time, in room 202. Tell me, where are the bodies of the couple you killed? Guqi's eyes flashed purple, and his voice was cold and cold, without any warmth. They are. Suda's expression became dazed. One of them was hidden by me in the electrical room on the 5th floor, and the other was hidden by me in the electrical room on the 1st floor. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuan-K. Chapter 309. Electricity room, Shan Yu repeated, his gleaming phoenix eyes twinkling slightly. By the way, each floor has an electric room dedicated to the electricity consumption of that floor. However, the electric rooms are always in inconspicuous corners, and the space inside is generally relatively small, and there may be unexpected situations such as leakage of electricity. And there were various danger warning signs posted on it, so we all neglected to look at the situation there. It's not ignored. Guqi stood up, his eyes still on Suda, and his voice was calm. It's locked there, and ordinary players can't open it. Oh, so that's it? Upon hearing this, Shan Yu blinked his phoenix eyes. Average player? Judging from the reactions of other players, Guqi must not be an ordinary player, right? Is there any way to open it? Guqi put Suda back into the porcelain vase. He turned his head and glanced at Shan Yu. Separately look for the body. Do you want to go to the 1st floor or the 5th floor? Forward. Searching separately can indeed shorten the time, but Gujuyi, I'm just a new player, I don't have any means to save my life. Shan Yu spread his hands and bit his lower lip lightly, revealing a shallow dimple on both cheeks. Gucci looked slightly startled. I almost forgot that this woman is just a new player. The strength of Angel Su and Qin Chi naturally goes without saying. Fatty Feng, who seemed to be the weakest, at least had various life-saving props and several rounds of dungeon experience. In addition, Su Tingyu had already received Shan Yu's reward, and now that the latter was following him, if something unexpected happened, wouldn't it mean that he would be ruining his reputation? Besides, you can suppress this thief. Su Da, I went to find the couple with nothing, and I didn't even have any means to win their trust. Shan Yu spoke calmly, on his face, sounding like there was nothing wrong with him and he was somewhat convincing. Gucci, trouble, then you stay here. No. Shan Yu shook his head and refused, pointing down to the floor with his finger, this is your room. I'll stay here at night. What if something happens? Gucci frowned, then what do you want? It's easy, let's go together. Shan Yu blinked his beautiful eyes. Gucci glanced at her, turned around and walked towards the door. Just as he was about to hold the door handle, he paused and turned his head. Why are you still standing there? Shan Yu responded very wisely, okay. Stop. Seeing that Shan Yu was too close, Gucci raised his hand to stop him. Stay away from me, at least 2 meters away. Shan Yu. Seeing the person stop, Gucci twisted the door handle, opened the door, and walked out first. Shan Yu lowered his head and glanced at his perfect figure. Even a normal man couldn't ignore it. There's nothing wrong with it. To take a step back, even if you don't feel it, it's not disgusting, right? Why is this guy named Gu avoiding me like the plague? Are you still not allowed to come within 2 meters? Shan Yu couldn't help but wonder, could it be that his acting skills in playing the role of Chu Chu, pitiful and silly Bai Tian, had deteriorated? After going out, Shan Yu thought that he should go to the first floor first. After all, this is the second floor, which is closest to the first floor. However, Shan Yu didn't say anything, but asked Gucci first. The first floor and the 5th floor, which one should we go to first? Gucci replied, first floor. Shan Yu was not surprised by the expected answer. She nodded, and then followed Gucci down the stairs. The two of them came to the stairs on the first floor. Gucci, who was at the front, just turned right and took a step, then stopped where he was. His gaze seemed to be fixed in front of him. Behind, Shan Yu was a little confused. She took a few steps closer, not forgetting to keep a distance of 2 meters between the two. Then, she tilted her head and looked in front of Gucci. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 310. Knock knock, knock knock. In front of room 101, which had its door closed, stood a somewhat hunched figure. It was raising its hand and knocking on the door over and over again. This. After Shan Yu saw it clearly, his eyes widened slightly. Isn't this the strange old woman who appeared in her house on the first night? Hearing the noise, Gucci turned his head and glanced at Shan Yu, signaling the latter to be silent. Seeing this, Shan Yu raised his hand, lightly twisted the tips of his thumb and index finger together, and made a zipper motion near his mouth. The two stood there for a while, but the old woman was still knocking on the door, seeming to want to get in. Hey, isn't this old woman able to enter our room easily? Why can't she enter room 101 now? Shan Yu asked in a low voice. After hearing this, Gucci looked thoughtful and walked out. Mother-in-law, do you need my help to open the door? Gucci walked 2 meters away from the old woman, stopped and asked. Behind, Shan Yu opened her red lips slightly in surprise, and blinked her eyes. Damn it! Why did this guy's tone suddenly become gentle? The old woman knocked on the door for a moment, and the knocking stopped. She turned around slowly and stared at Gucci with a pair of cloudy presbyopic eyes. After staring at Gucci for 5 minutes, the old woman bent down, clenched her right hand into a fist, lightly hammered her calf a few times, then raised her head and stared at Gucci again, her chapped lips slowly moving. You said, what? Shan Yu from behind almost laughed. Good guy, it turns out that this mother-in-law is a little deaf. When Gucci heard the movement behind him, his expression remained unchanged. Mother-in-law, I can open the door for you. As he said that, he raised his hand to motion to the door of room 101. Oh, this, okay, the old lady finally heard clearly this time. She nodded with a smile and moved away. I am old and forgetful. I forget to bring my keys when I go out. Seeing that Gucci seemed to have taken care of it, Shan Yu walked out. She waved to the old woman with a bright smile. Hello, mother-in-law. Hey, when did such a beautiful girl come to the apartment? The old woman's presbyopia seemed to have brightened a few times, and she showed a kind smile belonging to an elder. Girl, you can't go out alone at night. Okay, mother-in-law, I will remember it. Shan Yu agreed obediently. On the other side, Gucci raised his hand and tried to twist the door handle, but it didn't open, it was locked inside. Seeing this, he took a few steps back. As soon as Shan Yu glanced at Gucci out of the corner of his eye, he saw the latter's gesture. He didn't want to just kick the door open, right? Boom. A hole was suddenly opened in the middle of the wooden door panel. Gucci continued to kick the hole a few more times, widening the hole several times, then reached inside, twisted the door handle, and opened the door completely. While Gucci was concentrating on kicking the door, Shan Yu was stunned for a second, then quickly turned around and explained to her mother-in-law, Mother-in-law, didn't you bring the key? It's dark now, and I won't be able to find anyone to open the lock for a while. If you can let him tear it down like this, don't worry, he will compensate for the broken door. It looks like this is an old woman's home. They destroyed other people's homes just like that, but don't be like that Wen Junjun who suddenly goes on a rampage and eats people. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuan-Ke. Chapter 311. Gucci, who had just opened the door, accidentally heard the last few words emphasized by Shan Yu. His tone was very firm and sincere. Tisk. Under the sunglasses, Gucci narrowed his eyes slightly dangerous. Sensing that Gucci's eyes seemed to be fixed on him, Shan Yu showed no guilt on his face and showed a sincere smile to the former, saying the hidden danger has been eliminated. Ah. Gucci looked away with an indifferent expression. Huh. Oh, okay, the old woman finally thought about the current situation, and she waved her hand, not caring much. It's okay, girl. I'm very grateful to you for helping me, an old woman, to open the door. How can I charge you money? I can finally go home. Do you want to come in and sit down and have a rest? Shan Yu was stunned for a moment, unable to make up her mind. She turned her head and glanced at Gucci. When the latter nodded, she smiled warmly again. Okay, thank you, mother-in-law. You guys come in with the old lady. My home is a bit shabby as an old lady. Just don't dislike it. The old lady was helped into the door by Shan Yu, who kept mumbling. Gucci followed this man and a ghost in. You guys sit down for a while, and I'll boil some water and make some tea. Okay, mother-in-law. While Shan Yu was dealing with the old lady, he tilted his head and looked in front of the TV in the living room. There was no longer the figure of the game man who had been sitting in front of the game console for most of the day. Gucci frowned slightly. Where is this thing hiding again? The reason why Gucci changed his plan midway and accepted the old woman's invitation was because he wanted to find out the cause of death of the old woman who was the original resident of room 101. Based on the existing clues, it is inferred that the murderer is most likely the gamer. However, the panel system cannot be judged to be successful by inferring out of thin air. Conclusive evidence still needs to be found. Shan Yu was sitting on the sofa, his eyes following the old woman's figure. When he saw the latter entering the kitchen, an angry voice suddenly sounded inside. "You, why are you here? Get out of here. Old woman, please stop worrying about me. I can go wherever I like. You treacherous son." As soon as Shan Yu stood up, a figure was already striding towards the kitchen. "It's Gucci." Shan Yu quickly followed. In the kitchen, the old woman was lying on the floor, with a kitchen knife stuck in the wound on her chest. At this time, Gucci, who had entered first, was already standing in front of the old woman. Between the kitchen wall and the ceiling in front of him, there was a humanoid monster that was neither human nor ghost. The area below the abdomen has been transformed into a wriggling insect body, and two arms that seem to have been stretched twice as long are holding a ferocious-looking corpse. The head of the corpse has been eaten away. Only the legs are left as limbs. Shan Yu's eyes were filled with surprise. This monster still looks a bit familiar. He is a gamer during the day. So what he's holding, is the player he's playing games with. The body is here. Get away. Seeing the appearance of Gucci and Shan Yu, the Game Boy roared angrily. Take your mother-in-law away first. An inconspicuous transparent thread appeared on Gucci's fingertips. Mother-in-law. After hearing this, Shan Yu trotted over, helped the old woman up and took her out of the kitchen. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuan-K. Chapter 312. After Shan Yu took the old woman out of the living room, he helped her sit down on the sofa. Shan Yu looked at the kitchen knife stuck in the old woman's chest and was at a loss for a moment. Grandma, this kitchen knife. It seemed that when the kitchen knife was inserted into the old woman's body, no blood came out. Right. The old woman is already a ghost, where can there be blood? However, Shan Yu always felt that the old woman's energy were not as good as before with this kitchen knife stuck in her body. Maybe there's something wrong with this kitchen knife? Mother-in-law, let me pull it out for you, Shan Yu said when he saw that the old woman's whole face was wrinkled and she was speechless in pain. Shan Yu grasped the handle of the kitchen knife and pulled it out. At this time, her panel suddenly popped up. The content on it made her a little confused, so she simply closed it and threw the kitchen knife on the ground. There are more important things. Mother-in-law, what happened to you? Shan Yu asked tentatively. Alas, he is such an evil beast. After pulling out the kitchen knife, the old woman gradually recovered. She sighed, and then slowly told the story of her life with the Game Boy. Game Boy is the youngest son of the old woman. When he was very young, the old woman and her wife have always doted on him. Unexpectedly, when I grew up, I discovered that I had spoiled the Game Boy rotten. When I was in school, I didn't study hard and thought about going to internet cafes to play games all day long. If I didn't have enough money, I would even steal money from my wife and I. Later, I couldn't even go to high school. After I dropped out, I didn't go out to find a job. Instead, I idled around all day, either going to the internet cafe to play games or on the way to the internet cafe. Even later, I became addicted to gambling. And when you have no money, you come to borrow money. In the beginning, the old lady and the old lady loved the Game Boy, and even divided some of their retirement funds to subsidize him. Unexpectedly, gradually, Game Boy became like a black hole that kept asking for things. When the old woman's wife died unexpectedly, because she was too sad and didn't want to live in her original home, the old woman sold her house and rented a house in Angel Apartments, planning to spend her last little time like this. But after the gamer lost money once, he set his sights on the money the old lady got from selling her house. When the old woman found out, she rejected him for the first time. As a result, he was killed. Congratulations to player He and Sick Beauty for successfully finding out the cause of death of the deceased in room 101, puzzle solving progress, 3/8. The panel system popped up, but the two parties involved now had no time to take care of so much. Shan Yu felt a little sad when he heard the old woman's story. Please note. Players He and Sick Beauty trigger the exclusive hidden mission number 101, Educational Rebellion. Mission background: every time the midnight bell rings, a figure lingers in every door, conscientiously completing the work of his lifetime time and time again, but never being able to return home. Task content: help the resident in room 101 educate his son. Task conditions: complete within the first night after accepting the task. Task reward: 200 game coins. Tisk tisk. Is this coming too soon? Shan Yu glanced in the direction of the kitchen. Just listening to the noise, the fighting inside seems to be very intense. But Shan Yu only heard the monster's roar or scream of pain. The one named Gu should be fine, right? There is a wall clock on the wall of the living room, and Shan Yu glances at it from time to time. After waiting for 15 minutes, there seemed to be no more intense noises coming from the kitchen. It's over? Shan Yu blinked lightly, stared at the kitchen door, hesitated, stood up, and walked to the kitchen. But before she could take a few steps, Gucci came out of it. He didn't look embarrassed at all and his face was calm. And behind him was a tied, wriggling fat worm. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 313. Gucci brought the Game Boy to the old woman and asked, "Grandma, what do you want to do with it?" The old woman panted and glared at the Game Boy, but gradually her expression became tired. "Oh, drive him away, get him out of the apartment." Okay, Gucci agreed and dragged the person towards the door of the room. Dear players, please note that the progress of solving the puzzle of Angel Apartment in this round, 3/8. Shan Yu watched Gucci's figure disappear and there was no pop-up panel. He turned to comfort the frustrated old woman. "Mother-in-law, does your chest still hurt?" "I'm fine, baby girl, alas." In less than 2 minutes, Shan Yu's panel popped up again. Congratulations to the player He and Sick Beauty for completing the exclusive hidden task, educating the trader. After the copy is completed, you will receive a reward of 200 game coins. Shan Yu sat for a few more minutes and found that Gucci had not come back, and couldn't help but feel a little confused. She turned to the old woman and said, "Mother-in-law, it's late at night. You can go and rest. It's time for me to leave." "Okay, I'm going to be lazy and not clean tonight, old lady." Shan Yu helped the old woman all the way to the bedroom, and saw the latter lying on the bed, with her hands clasped together and flat on her chest, like a quiet corpse. "Mother-in-law, good night." Shan Yu said goodbye softly, then turned and left the bedroom. When passing by the living room, Shan Yu's eyes caught a glimpse of the lonely kitchen knife that fell on the ground. She thought about it, picked it up, and then walked out of room 101. Where did he go? After Shan Yu came out, he turned a corner and could see the door of the apartment at a glance. It was still open, but it was gray outside during the day and turned dark at night. But there was no figure of Gucci at the door. Shan Yu hesitated for a moment, then thought of another place, the electric room. He didn't go there, right? Shan Yu recalled the location of the electric room on the first floor, then grabbed a kitchen knife in his hand to find someone. When Shan Yu found Gucci, he was indeed near the electric room. The door lock of the electric room has been removed. There are dense wires inside, and a bulging sack is placed in a small open space in the middle. After Gucci dragged the sack out, before he could untie it, the sack suddenly moved. Then, the front half of the sack, which was lying flat on the ground, stood up in a vertical line. It swayed left and right, the back half twisted, and the whole sack stood up straight little by little. Shan Yu's eyes widened and her red lips opened slightly. She wanted to say something, but for a moment she felt she was short of words. Gucci used a dagger to cut off the binding hole on the sack. The sack fell to the ground, revealing the full contents. This is a woman, ah no, a female undead. She was wearing a housewife's home-style clothes, and her hair was tied up and fixed. Maybe it was from being in a sack for a long time. When she came out, her hair was already a little messy. Her appearance was not an alluring one, but she was still in an IKEA room. She was pretty and moving. The most fatal wound on the sack girl was on her neck. There was a deep stab wound. There was a large amount of blood coagulated on the wound, and some of it was also stained on her collar and hands. Why did I get out? When the sack girl saw the dagger in Gucci's hand, her eyes suddenly shrank, and she took several steps back in panic. But when it turned its head and saw the kitchen knife in Shan Yu's hand, shock appeared on its stiff and pale face, and its tone was a bit frightened. "You, who are you?" Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 314. Hearing this, Shan Yu glanced at Gucci's face with some hesitation. Gucci still has the same face of ice that has not changed for thousands of years. In the movie and TV scripts, he is a proper big boss, while this trembling sack girl is more like an innocent victim. A series about people scaring ghosts? Who is the ghost here? Many thoughts passed through Shan Yu's mind, with a light smile on his face and gentle words, "Hello, we." Shan Yu explained the cause and effect to the sack girl, making it clear that they were here to help the couple. Gucci, on the other hand, released Su Da's trustworthy evidence. Thank you, thank you." After hearing this, the sack girl put down her guard and looked touched. "Now let's help you find your husband first, and then you can discuss how to deal with Su Da," Shan Yu said with a smile on his face. Okay, thank you. Thank you." The sack girl seems to have a somewhat introverted personality and is not very good at dealing with outsiders. After a while, she was made a little embarrassed by the enthusiastic Shan Yu, and she didn't even know where to put her hands. In this way, the atmosphere between the two of them was very harmonious, and they walked up the stairs together. Dear players, please note that the progress of solving the puzzle of Angel Apartment in this round, 4/8. Before they even reached the third floor, their panels popped out. After Shan Yu saw it, he turned his head and glanced at Gucci, who seemed thoughtful on his face. Shan Yu wanted to ask Gucci, but when the words came to his lips, he remembered that there was a sack woman beside him, so he didn't ask in the end. However, Shan Yu can also deduce that this is another player who has found out the cause of death in a room. Could it be Susu and the others? But Susu and the others' exclusive mission tonight is between the stairs on the second and third floors. They shouldn't have a chance to pass by any room, right? The two of them walked all the way to the fifth floor without seeing any human figures or ghosts. At this time, in room 302. We're really good people. We are really good people. We are here to help you, don't be afraid. Why do your hands keep shaking? Are you having a convulsion? Looking at the disabled young man lying on the ground in front of him, looking stunned, Sutingyu raised his hand and rubbed his depressed head. Kikai, why is it ignoring me? Sutingyu pursed her lips, stretched out her hand, and grabbed the corner of Qin-Chi's clothes, her tone full of confusion. Qin-Chi didn't know how to explain. After the two of them came out of Gucci's room, they went straight to the stairs, intending to wait and see. As a result, naturally, the two of them waited until the disabled young man came to climb the stairs. At the beginning, Sutinyu jumped out and ran out, which really shocked the disabled young man. Later, the two of them explained their intentions, but the disabled young man was very suspicious and looked dubious, so he still refused the help of Sutinyu and the others and insisted on climbing up alone. It's not like Sutinyu didn't allow it to be self-reliant and promote the excellent spiritual character of independence. Mainly, it took me a long time to move 3 steps, but accidentally rolled down 5 steps. Instead of advancing, I retreated. Sutinyu was dumbfounded. Just when the disabled young man was about to roll down the stairs from the 2nd floor to the next, Sutinyu finally couldn't help it anymore. Sutinyu grabbed the disabled young man by his collar with one hand and carried him up to the 3rd floor without stopping. When the disabled young man was thrown, into room 302, Sutinyu and his wife's exclusive mission was also completed. Originally, the two of them could leave. But the disabled young man now looked so frightened that Sutinyu grappled with his conscience for a long time, and finally couldn't bear it anymore, so he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he stayed to comfort the disabled youth. However, the effect seems not ideal.